Pretty well.
All right, it's time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. This is a workshop, much different. I think all of you know that are here. Much different than a regular formal city council meeting. Just, of course, just regular rules of politeness, but anybody can speak, anybody can ask questions, very laid back. So welcome and thank you. And with that, this meeting commences.
Day 3.
Day 291.
Okay, so in continuing with the three main priorities that the city's been focusing towards, the second item of discussion is our wastewater treatment plant. Same format as yesterday. Each of the council members will provide their insight and input, and then we'll open it up to the public. We're specifically.
You're okay, don't run. You're fine. It's just a workshop. Yeah, it's just a workshop.
We're gonna go through each of the elected officials and then open it up for the public to discuss. So the current concerns with the wastewater treatment plant is the whole plant.
Yeah.
I just throw the whole thing out there. I wanted to give you kind of a breakdown of what we have done over the past couple of years and kind of understand the timeline and the procurement, and it's not an easy fix. So in 2021, City Council approved a feasibility study for the whole entire wastewater treatment plant that outlined all of the current and future concerns of the plant, including the capacity, the licensing, the need to replace, repair, remodel the whole entire plant. So after that feasibility study was implemented and approved by council, we kind of had a couple parallel projects. What we first did, what I called phase 1, is we secured and replaced the aerators at the wastewater treatment plant. It had been operating with 1 when it should have 2. Throughout the past several years, they had tried different techniques, but it just wasn't really doing what it needed to do. We also replaced the first bar screen coming into the treatment plant with an automated one. For those of you who don't know what a bar screen is, when the waste comes into the sewer plant, the very first thing it hits is what we call a bar screen. This screens all of the larger items out. This is your clothes, this is your towels, your shoes, your softballs, your golf balls. Yes, this all has come through. Your teddy bears, money.
Yeah.
Anything of a larger will come through that. And then before, they were manually having to scoop it up, throw it in the trash can. Now there's an automated system that helps with that. A little less dirty for them. So those 2 projects were started in 2021, completed about probably about closer to the end of 22. There was setbacks with the original aerator and the design and the electricity. Our engineers did a wonderful job.
I just wanted to mention, if anybody wants to tour the wastewater treatment plant, that they will give you a tour. They will take you. I mean, I've gone out there. It's interesting. You've gone out there. I know you've been out.
I would like to go.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, just get with Megan and she'll find a time that they can.
Come on,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
It is a secured site, so we don't just let anyone go out there. They're not supposed to. Access to it is through a private property, so we are kind of particular on what we do.
Right.
So we have a question.
No, I was just gonna say it's very catchy, tour of the sewer.
Yeah. We could have that as our banner, tour the sewer. I like it.
So we completed that phase. The second phase in 23, and we're now in 24. We are procuring the 1 rehab of a clarifier and the drying beds. The engineers are assisting us with that. It does have to be specifically engineered because we're not completely replacing, we're rehabbing what is out there. And of course, every wastewater treatment has different sizes. So we have to make sure that when this is out for procurement, that we have the specific sizes, mechanisms, because we don't want anyone to just bid and come down to, oh, well, I really can't do that project. Or, oh, you really should have replaced the whole thing. The drying beds, over probably 30 years, the drying beds have been slightly altered, which has put us in trouble with TCQ because we are permitted for specifics. We know that there's several drying beds that are now non-usable whatsoever, but we're going to rehab the remaining drying beds. For those of you who don't know, once the material goes through the plan, it goes through this whole entire process. The last step is what would some people say really good soil, really good material to plant with. That gets put into these big beds to dry to make it a more crumbly, and then we load it up and we actually take it to our landfill. And that's used at the landfill for coverage for the different cells that they have out there. So that's the second one. That currently is in progress. The funding for that is coming from the ARPA funds, which is what we solidified last night to get that second half.
American Rescue Plan.
Yes, so that is completely taken care of. The third phase for this next year is the second clarifier. The second clarifier is important because you really want both of them running at the same time. We only have one running right now, which is why we're pushing to rehab the one first, get that one up and running. So then we can rehab the second one. You can't have them down at the same time. So that's the third phase. After we kind of get the clarifiers in place, we get the drying beds in place, the idea is to come back and reevaluate what the next phase should be. There's been conversation of providing additional storage out there, designing and looking at the belt press that's out there and the functionality of that. But I think once talking with everyone, we really wanted to see, okay, once we get the clarifiers fixed and we get the drying beds fixed, what would be the next big priority? These are current big priorities for the wastewater treatment plant. So for the next fiscal year, we're looking at completing clarifier 1, drying beds, and initiating clarifier 2. The funding for clarifier 2 will have to be within our budget. We're looking at about $900,000. In addition, I did speak with the wastewater treatment plant operators, and some of the things they would like to see, of course, continued repairs to the plant. You know, that's their main priority. But they're also kind of excited because if these drying beds get up and running, they'd like the additional skid steer to be able to clear those out faster. Currently, they just have one little one. So if they could have 2, that would help operate it a lot faster. There are 3 employees out there. And then
That's manual to operate too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
you
they
think
basically
we
have to
3
come in and clean out the beds
Yeah.
and they put it in a dumpster. TDS comes and they take it to the landfill and they use it there. And the last big thing, of course, is continued training. So those are their big insights. I wanted this as an item just once again to show that we are moving forward with the different phases. We've currently been able to do it without an impact to the budget because we've done really well with planning. But as we get into the third phase and then anything after that, making sure we have that funding either through the operating phase with increase in our sewer rate or with looking at outside options.
So for our leaks of our sewer lines, how often is that occurring? We also have to think about the lines. We've got the plant. We also have the aging lines, some of which are wood or what is it, Greenberg or Orangeburg? Yeah.
So
What about the lines? How often are we having those leaks and where should they
we
be?
don't have those. So a lot of people will say sewer backup, sewer leak. We don't have as many on the city side.
Okay.
So we do have some that come up. We just had one where we had to replace, I believe it was 10 feet of line. And it does take a little bit of time because you can't shut sewer off. There's not a valve that turns it off and it stops. So it's constantly moving through. So they were kind of having to piece it through. We probably have, within the past year, we've probably had 3 or 4
Okay.
that have been having to be addressed. A lot of our sewer leaks and sewer concerns come back on the property owner side.
So our Orangeburg isn't a huge priority right now.
It's not a huge priority, but it's something that will have to be addressed.
Okay.
So I'm looking at it from like a 1, 2, 3 year to try to, okay, let's get the plant. Because if the plant can't take it, it doesn't matter what's going on in the city. We did alter our permit. I shouldn't say alter. We had our permit amended. It's currently up for discussion. So our engineers came back in and after they did all of their data analysis and looked at our flow, looked at what was coming in, what was going out. They came back in and said, we, based on our plant size and based on the prediction of how big Alpine would get, we're nowhere close to that. So because we're nowhere close to that, we amended our permit to manage less than 1 million gallons a day. So we were currently permitted over 1 million. It was like 1.4, 1.5. We actually amended it to like 99999, right at that limit. And what that did was it released some of the responsibilities on the city. We don't have to have a Class B operator. We have to have the Class Cs, but we do have a Class B operator now, which is wonderful and very
is that?
proud of him, Richard Wiley.
Okay, good.
So he just needed that little extra push. So even if we were to amend our permit to go back to a larger capacity, because we had all of a sudden a larger growth, then we would be okay. But we made the decision to amend it to reduce it. One, some of the requirements that go with that permit, like the licensing. Two, we were never at that capacity for year after year after year. Three, the growth wasn't in Alpine. They predicted would be about 20,000 people by 2025. That's not where we're obviously at. Some of the testing did change and what we're required to provide for testing. So the wastewater treatment plant does have to provide regular daily, monthly, and quarterly and annual testing. So if we test like, I don't know all their terms, I apologize. I know like BODs and they have all these phrases. If it comes back, then we have to really look at the health of the plant. So they have bugs out there, is what they call them. And it's actually what keeps the plant healthy. It breaks down some of the solids. It's kind of how it works. So we have to monitor that as well. So they've done a really good job. We think the aerators have definitely made an improvement. The 2 clarifiers will make the next big improvement. And then I think in the next 3 years, we come back and say, okay, we've got them fixed. Let's get into the city. We are addressing, like you said, the sewer as it comes along. If at any time there's a shift, it's just understanding we would need to bring someone in to do a full-blown study to see where do we need to start. The city has not, in my knowledge, actually gone in and replaced big sections of sewer lines. Now we have replaced big sections of water lines. There was the 2003 project on the south side that redid most of those lines. So that's something to take into consideration.
So also when we lowered the permit, that made us able to have effluent or gray water. Is that
That's
correct?
a separate permit.
Okay, separate permit, but that permit now allows us to do that.
We've always been able to do it.
We just were testing for the wrong thing.
There was a
Okay.
misunderstanding, miscommunication between individuals at the time. I know that Mr. Stevens kind of pushed with, hey, what's going on with the effluent? I reached out to the engineers and I provided them everything that was provided to me in regards to why we couldn't do it. I got a nice email back with, well,
You
not
can't.
sure who told you that, but you can.
Do you want to explain what effluent is in case somebody doesn't know?
So effluent water is the byproduct at the end of the sewer system or the sewer plant. So it's kind of like what you call gray water.
If you go camping,
So it's gone through the whole process. It does get treated, but we're only permitted to use it for the golf course.
because you're not allowed to drink it. It's not potable water. It's like, I don't know if anybody's ever camped, but that's what it's like, the gray water.
So it's the very last, and it's not always, we can't always use it either. So when it gets to the end of the system, it has to be tested to determine if we can put it towards the golf course. We're only permitted currently for that type of application. We can't even use it like on our own parks. So we would have to do a whole different permitting process, which means we'd have to go through a whole different testing process. We'd have to test differently. So when we can't use it because we've had a hiccup, I call them hiccups, the plant just doesn't like what's going on. We actually have to we call it, we put it down the creek because we're allowed to. So it's kind of just wasted. We're not recouping and reusing it. So for a while there, we weren't producing effluent water, miscommunication, unfortunate, it happened, but the engineer came back and said, no, you actually are perfectly fine. That type of testing doesn't apply to you. So I think some of the bigger cities, I can't explain exactly why, they just reassured me.
That we
And
can.
the plant, like I said, is starting to operate better. We haven't had those hiccups. I'm gonna get in trouble now. We jinx ourselves here.
Yeah,
And so they're pushing that gray water. affluent
and are
water
we
to-
producing gray water now to send
Yes.
to, so we are, so
Yes.
they're actually using it?
Yes.
Is that what they're watering with?
For part of it, so
Okay.
they don't use gray water or fluent water for the whole golf course. But they've been really good. Our team has been working with them, so they're coordinating. If there are issues, they let the golf course know, the golf course lets them know as well. That tank, it can be drained within hours. So we're trying to produce it just as fast as they're trying to use it. So those are the big concerns for the wastewater treatment plant, and I'd like to start different today. I'm gonna start with Mr. Stevens, because I know he has brought this up before, and kind of get your insight.
Great. So, priorities, there's a phase one, you've been working all that. And phase two, in terms of working to clarify the money, it's also great. When do we expect we'll get those finished, Megan?
So we have yet to go out for procurement. I'm trying to get with the engineers to get a better timeline for the phase two, which is one clarifier in the drying beds. We're required to spend all of that money by the end of next year.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So ultimately,
2025.
yes, ultimately that deadline is 2025.
Gotcha.
The thing that I want other and the council and the public to understand is it's the procurement that's gonna be the hardest, because this is federal money.
Yep.
And the federal government's hoops are a lot harder.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of federal contracts on the side, so city lines and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we're double checking, crossing our T, dotting our Is. We would have done just a task order and a regular RFP. I now have a 41-page contract with our engineers
Yep.
to even do this project. So
Not
that should be by the end of 2025, but at the same time, the construction should start within hopefully the beginning of 2025. At the same time, we're gonna start the procurement for the second clarifier to kind of piggyback off of that first one. We're hoping that if we can get the RFP for the second one, whoever bids may pick up that second one at the same time. And then we can get them both done.
So that's helpful, which says phase one and phase two are paid for. Okay. What's not clear to me, that we have to do a complete rebuild of clarifier number two.
That's why we want the engineers to come out. So in order for them to fully understand what needs to be fixed.
Yep.
We really need phase or clarifier one.
Yep.
To be up and running so that they can get,
So they try to.
Yes.
Because I've got clarifier two, it is so much better in shape than clarifier number one. You're gonna have to replace motors and all that stuff. I think one of the important questions that I think about is, what truly is the annual maintenance cost for an up and running wastewater treatment plant?
so we forced to operate within what we budget.
Oh,
Instead of truly understanding.
I
the
understand, I'm
maintenance.
not asking that question, what would a normal annual maintenance budget be? To operate that, assuming you've got your drying beds in place, your two clarifiers up and running, your area is working, because you got all sorts of ancillary pumps and everything else. That would, in my mind, would be a really important question to get an answer to, because as we think about annual budgeting from the city standpoint, you got the capital improvements you're working your way through, but that will allow us to understand what we need for wastewater and tie into what sewer rate should we be charging for wastewater processing. I think so that's one item. The second, so capacity is under 1 million gallons. We only process about 40,000 gallons a day out there. I would be hard pressed to ever think we'd go above that.
Well, when we have a population of 20,000.
I know,
Yes.
I got it, but that's why I say keep that in mind. We're gonna process about 40,000 gallons. And that's probably realistic, and you start looking. I think the other question goes in my mind. While it'd be nice to have an automated, the belt press fixed and all that stuff. I mean, running. It'll be good for those of you who have not been out to the wastewater treatment plant. To clean out the drying beds, maybe a half day's worth of work to clear all of them out. Anyone who understands a skid steer, it's a half day. It's not a huge consumption of dollars and manpower. So I would be hard pressed to support anything automated. If the belt press works, that's wonderful.
So that's already automated, so
Okay.
that one's good. They're recommending putting in the second one, but that would be like phase 4. And
Yeah.
we're not there yet until we know how these clarifiers and everything else.
But what's the belt press cost?
We paid 400 and something thousand.
Yeah, so to me,
It has to be done daily, right?
no,
No.
no,
Is
yeah,
that a
so
weekly?
think about it. Literally stuff flows out,
Mhm.
it goes into a drying bed, it sits and dries. Once it's dry, then you go clean it out, you throw it in the dumpster goes on its way.
So that's once a week, month.
And my view is, depends on how we get our solids down.
So
Yeah.
there's so many hiccups, there's so many issues that the plant does not operate start to finish
You wish-
Right.
without having to come in and make some type of adjustment to
Sure,
get it to the next step.
right.
So once, like I said, we get the clarifiers, which is a big aspect of it. The aerators was the first big aspect.
Yeah.
That's been taken care of.
Forever.
Second is these clarifiers.
Uh-huh.
Then you're gonna start seeing the plant actually function like a plant. And they're not having to, so half a day on a skid steer is completely correct. It should not take them weeks.
Yep.
But when they're having to stop because they've got an issue coming over here,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
it doesn't take half a day.
So half a day, but we don't know how often that half a day happens.
Yeah, it's probably half a day a week.
A week.
Yeah, you got 3 employees, it's one of the things you go do. I mean, good skid steer drivers ought to work it. The point being, I think once you understand what that flow looks like, that will make an informed decision. Do you need another belt press, or why spend any money on redoing the drying beds?
So we think rehabbing the drying beds is gonna be the better solution because that's the design of the plant.
So you and I are in the same spot. That's why you're gonna have a hard time with me if I'm still on council buying drying number 2. You know, in terms of the belt press. It's tough to see the automation. After we had our doggone last freeze out there, I spent some time out there with the belt press. It did not get properly packed. Everything froze, all the valves cracked, and immediately negated the value of the belt press.
We put
Just-
a lot of money to fix it.
Yeah, my reaction is you almost wanna sell it off, go back to drying beds, you're done with it. ROI, return on investment, I think is gonna be the real question on a second belt press.
And the drying beds, like, this really isn't good.
They're cheap, they're concrete and driving down in. How many of you driven a skid steer before? It'd be worthwhile to go find a skid steer and go drive one. I mean, one is fun, it
Uh-huh.
gives you perspective about what it takes to go do that. Yeah,
Just make sure you keep the little windows closed, especially on windy days.
yeah, I don't want to get out there, but yeah,
Oh, gross.
no, it's not too bad, but. You'd be hard pressed for me to say who was sitting on that. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Counselor Nance?
So when you did mention about the first clarifier and all that kind of stuff, the funds have to be expended by the end of next year,
Yes.
but the project doesn't have to be finished by then, correct?
No, it would, because the
Got
funds are going to be what pays the pot.
I thought there was a different date between they had to be procured and finished, no?
So by the end of this year, we have to have them actually obligated.
Okay, got it.
Next year, we have to have a 0 bank account.
Perfect.
You gotta, checks written, money out the pot.
Okay. Feasibility study, you said, was that a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, or is it just basically what can we accomplish? Here's what we need to accomplish, and it needs to be done within a certain time frame.
The feasibility study was designed to say this is everything wrong with the plant.
Okay.
And then to give us the option of altering how we wanted to phase it based on importance. So we've tried to go after grants to get it all done at once. Haven't been successful. Ideally, it could be a 10-year. That would not be beneficial to our employees or the community either. So we're trying to, my game is 5 years.
And then do most cities our size run on 3 employees? Is that pretty common? I'm wondering.
You know, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. We had an individual, we had hired a company to serve as our utility when we couldn't find someone. He came in from North Carolina and he indicated that if the plant operated as exactly it should, you wouldn't need more than.
That's why I was wondering, because labor is always your highest cost. So if everything is working hunky-dory, what do we need on the labor end?
And he suggested 1, because it would really be to go out there and do the visual inspection, do your daily testing, and that would be it.
But one individual 7 days a week, because you have to go out there
We don't
Saturday,
have that
Sunday.
Permitting requirement. anymore.
Oh, we don't. Okay, that's good. Because I know what I did for a while. Somebody was having to go out there every day.
And that's where, and his name was Ron. He's a great guy. I know Richard learned a lot from him. I think Mike did as well. If the plant ran like it should, your permitting change, everything would have changed. But the plant hasn't run
Run
like
like
it should.
that. So having 3 in your estimate is appropriate?
So three is what we have because they're constantly doing little fires.
Right.
But if the plant got up to be where it needed to be, I think we could maintain the 3, no problem. And if we had to reduce, we can move 1 to water.
So when
So
there's a
that would be-
sewer leak, who is it? Is it our water team that goes out there and takes care of that? Or is it the wastewater team?
It is the water.
The water team takes care of that. Okay.
So just so that people understand, when it comes to the sewer plant, it's not just the plant, it's all the lift stations as well.
Uh-huh.
So every morning, the guys go out to the different lift stations that are around Alpine that are ours. There are several lift stations that are privately owned that we don't touch. And we make sure the pumps are working. It's not to a capacity level that we know that there's gonna be a major backup or leak. I believe we have 5.
Holiday Inn is private or is that ours?
No, that is ours.
Ours,
We call it the Holiday Inn lift station because
Uh-huh.
one, the Holiday Inn paid for it.
right.
It belongs to us. We have, Old Marathon Highway because it's on Old Marathon Highway. We were really original with our naming.
No, it's good because it tells us where they're at. I like the naming.
And then we have one on Murphy Street.
Uh-huh.
That I don't think most people know when you go through the little dip, there's actually a lift station. And I can't remember where the other 2 are at.
Do you want to explain real quick what a lift station is?
So we're on a gravity fed sewer system. So the lift station basically takes what it's coming in from one direction, it grinds it up and keeps it flowing and then kind of pushes it to the next section so that the gravity can take hold of it and move it where it needs to go. So it's really interesting if you ever look at our sewer system because you think, well, the pipes are moving this way. How does it eventually get that way? It's a very intertwined system. A lot of it does go uphill, believe it or not, and then it will come back down, ultimately all going out towards the sewer plant, which is off of Highway 118. And so the major line is out that. So it kind of does its little jumbling up here in town, goes through all the different sides and that, and then hits that. The individual sewer lines, your service lines, those also are kind of a different direction because they hit our main lines and then go out. And then, of course, when we have what people call a sewer backup, we go in and we look at our mains. So we'll open up a manhole and we kind of look in to say, is it flowing? So if there's a flow, it's typically not our main because our mains are fine. So then we go to the customer and we kind of say, do you have a clean out? Because that's important. If you have your own clean out, you can kind of push it back into our lines. And we work with the customer. Typically, it's gonna be right before clean out. It's unfortunate it happens that way. If we do have a manhole that's like at the top and then that flow is just not moving, then we have to backtrack to every manhole to see where the problem is at to address where it's coming from on the service area. We do put acid in them about monthly to try to keep the material going. You'll never know when you open one of those up what you'll find.
So back on those stations, because I get it a lot from Koresh, are we good on the quote unquote Holiday Inn lift station?
No.
Okay,
We're not good.
So the guys put in a lot of extra time throughout the day. Right now, we're actually manually controlling it. We've had some hiccups with the pumps. We don't know if something blew, so they've had to look at the floats, all the different components of the lift station. Skinner assists us with that, so we're getting it back on track. We had the feasibility done in 2022 when we realized we have so many issues with that lift station. In 2021, 22, we went through 6 pumps and they're about 15 to 20 grand a piece. And we went through 2 in 2 days. So the material coming in from Sol Ross, we don't know what they're doing. some of those college kids get crazy.
Jeans, I've heard jeans.
So we had jeans and the grinders aren't big enough to manage that, and so they burn them up because it's constantly trying to get it. So we had talked with Royal Ross before the huge switch over with everyone about them putting in a grinder pump on their side
Yeah.
to at least alleviate that. But then of course everyone's changed. Council did approve money, so we moved money into a separate account specifically for this Holiday Inn lift station. The engineers came back and said, we really don't need a lift station there. There's an old sewer line that could be rehabbed and reutilized and put it back into a gravity fed system. So instead of, it just, so of course we would have to, it goes down deeper. And so then it would push everything back into the lift station on Old Marathon. Which is a better lift station.
And so that would be that would be less expensive for us to rehab that.
That is their recommendation, and the feasibility study came back at like 175,000.
So, but we're still gonna have all of this stuff flowing out of Sul Ross.
So that's why we haven't moved forward with the project. It's really having a sit-down conversation with the university, because that would be an expense on their end. And at the time, they were okay, yeah, we'll do it if the city pays for it.
Okay, so I see Bonnie Albrecht once a week. Why don't I just go chat with her on Monday?
Okay.
I'll just broach something with her.
So
Bonnie is the CFO and head of operations, at Sul Ross, reports to Carlos. Yeah, I don't know any meeting with her, so I'll just ask Bonnie.
Yeah, it's kind of a twofold. If they put that in, it may reduce enough where we don't have to do anything with Holiday, but we don't know. But the backup option, if Sul Ross doesn't do anything, is to go gravity fed
Okay,
and reduce that.
I'll let you know.
Darren,
I was gonna see if you can talk to the new council members about the AMPS grant. And just catch them up on where we're at on the AMPS grant and how that's gonna fit in with this.
so this year, actually 23, the city applied for the small systems maintenance program. And we got awarded for our wastewater treatment plant. So what the program does is, it is a no cost to the city except for employee time. We have to put in 80 hours. And they'll actually come in and they will do a study of our whole entire system. So we had a kickoff meeting earlier this year. And actually haven't had anything else happen with it, so it's kind of at a standstill. But they'll come in and they'll evaluate our lines, they'll evaluate our plant, and they'll kind of come back with, okay, this is where you're at, what you need. They will have a financial component with, if you want to make improvements, this will help. It is a huge investment for the city because one, we've tried to do it a couple times before on our own, and it just didn't give us the end result we wanted. Having them come in and actually do it for us, and we're just having to provide 80 hours. 80 hours isn't a lot. It truly isn't. So giving 80 hours of our time, and it will be data, giving them our maps, giving them access to things. We'll be able to get this grant up and running, and we'll have a better understanding of our sewer system. So we're excited about that.
And then last thing I was gonna say was, you said there was 3 things they asked for: skid steer training, and what was the third?
Continued maintenance of the plant.
Gotcha. And I think the training part would be really, really phenomenal if we can kind of focus on that for those people, invest in them, so that they know more than any of us. I mean, I flush the toilet, and that's about the end of my knowledge on how a wastewater toilet works. So getting them in there so that they know what that maintenance cycle is going to be, because they're going to be directly under you, and then you're having those meetings with them for support. Because when I come back, I always think of, council a lot, very often kind of like a school board and everything else. Being a tech director up at the school board, I don't interact with the board much at all, but I interact with my boss, the superintendent, all the time. So she's constantly quizzing all of the directors, and hopefully we're on top of it and we stay trained to get that information to the Megan of the school district, so that comes back in. So I just think the training is going to be very, very important.
And they're all eager, that they really are. I mean, even our water department wants to move up. I think the continued maintenance for both sides will relieve some of that added time in the field, and we can get them in a classroom.
For both sides, water and
And
wastewater.
water and wastewater.
So who checks the lift stations daily? You said they're checked.
All 3 of them.
So it
so
is
they
this
rotate.
this wastewater team
Yes.
rotates and does that.
Yes, so they have a rotating schedule. We do have someone out there every day of the week. Because we know it doesn't operate like it should. So there is always someone out there.
Saturday, Sunday too?
Yes. They rotate, I was thinking on call every third week.
Okay.
And
I'm
they-
just still thinking about the number of employees that we have.
And they've built a great relationship with each other. And so it's really nice to see. There's been a big change in that. Anything else, Counselor Nance? Counselor Olivas?
Well, that answered my questions. One of my questions was the second clarifying. Council Stephen answered my question on that one. And my second, it was about the employees, and Council Nance got at that one, because you said it used to be manually. And now they have mechanical to do that. And you answered the word that 3 employees, so they check everything. So they got pretty much all the questions, and I will love to go and look around and see all those
You gonna go on a
facilities.
tour?
Yes.
Yes, go on a tour.
When it like kids take us on a day trip.
Yeah, there's still some manual stuff they have to do. Some of it's automated.
So the stuff that's been automated it allows them to touch the other items that need to be addressed. So it's really been an improvement. But they will always have to do the testing. So there's a lot of fun chemistry. They do have to test the different sections of water to make sure that it meets the standards of our different
Yeah,
bacteria.
and I learned about the lift station because I live at the creek and I never pay attention. So,
So none of the water flows into the creek that most of us know about.
okay,
The creek is north of the.
okay,
It doesn't come through Alpine
Yeah,
at all.
not-
okay.
So if you're to fly over. You drive out Highway 118, you make a right turn by the maintenance facility, you drive out, as Megan said, across the private property. You go out there, you see the wastewater treatment plant, and the creek runs north.
Okay.
So it's nice and green all along there.
Oh.
Yeah, whenever.
Do not take any of the tomatoes out there. Really pretty to know. And then they told me why. Counselor Stone, do you have any comments, things on that?
I appreciate that there's a lot of knowledge on here. Thank you, Counselor Stevens, for all of, sharing all of your knowledge as well. I'm gonna kind of look at a couple of points. I love how we set all the priorities here, and then all of a sudden you get in the details and it's like, oh my goodness, I thought we were so set up, right?
Oh,
I'm fairly new, except for probably like an 8th grade field trip to the San Antonio wastewater plant. It was one of those where they had at the end where they put the water out and the guy drinks it and offers it to you, and not one student drinks it. Right? But they threw it into the San Antonio River, and it was one of the first at that time that was able to do that. And so I appreciate that we are trying to use this water. We're in the desert. 2 quick points on that, and just kind of noting places where my head is, and looking in the drying bed versus bolt press, or it was the 2 options that you were bringing up there.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the end product on both of those? Are they both going to the dump? Is there not? Yeah, so both are creating waste.
It's
There's
dry
not-
waste.
Okay, so there's not like a better option or something like
No.
that. Very good. Just wanted to ask that. And then second of all, I think this is something we all probably share, and you can make a comment to, the golf cart course is fantastic. It is a great business here. I know a bunch of people that have, carts and go golfing out there. Shoot, I love being able to shoot a couple balls too. With that, I think, something I'd be interested in is seeing how we can start using that gray water for more of a public interest, coconut watering, other parks, other places
Medina
like
Park.
that. Yeah, as.
That would
the
be a
brook, yes.
permit change.
Right.
But I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, that's
So-
year 5, but just to
Yeah.
keep it on our minds.
My long-term goal, because we do have a lot of interest, including Sol Ross.
Sure.
Mhm.
If we get the plant where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Then I think the city should go out, re-amend our gray water, our fluid permit.
Sure.
To allow Sol Ross, the city parks, to be able to use it.
Yeah.
Now, I would not offer to sell it.
Yeah.
So once the plant is functioning, then it's what we call purple pipe.
Sure.
So then we would actually have to install purple pipe from the plant to be able to come into the city because it can't be in the same pipeline.
Yeah, yeah,
So we only have line right now specifically for the golf course.
sure.
But then there's working with the golf course, it's working with Sol Ross because the golf course is right there by Coconut.
Yeah,
How do we not bring in pipe and tee off of where that
Right there.
is
yeah,
and then kind of spread it out?
yeah.
So that would be, I'd say year 5.
And also be able to, and to be honest, I know this has been brought up by someone else that is trying to run for a position up here, but being able to put a little bit of that water right through the golf course, have a creek in Alpine again. And I know that again, it's not the hugest priority, but that all of these things are down the line and hopefully where we can get to with some of these.
Poet
plans.
Grove Springs.
So Post
like what we
Grove, they
used to
wanted
have.
to revitalize
yeah.
the springs.
Absolutely,
And we've got a little sprinkler system in on that side. Of course, it is potable water.
yeah,
So like they've slowly done things.
Yeah.
And then when they had the sit down conversation, okay, now we want to use the potable water. I had to be a little bit of, or the affluent water, I had to be that bad guy that says, well, we're not permitted for that.
yeah,
And so then it was, okay, how do we get permitted? And then it was like, okay, well, we have to get our plant.
Yeah.
To a level that it will produce a better quality of affluent.
totally.
And so, no, I, that's a wonderful, because I'm really focused on long-term sustainability with the city. We live in a desert. I think we've kind of taken it for granted
Yeah.
that, you know, we water sidewalks sometimes.
Yeah.
But if we could repurpose that water back into the community.
Yeah.
And then reduce what we're pulling out of the ground, it's a win-win.
And again, with our, kind of hope plans to be able to zero-scape around here and other places like that, I think it just puts us at saying the city's taking these as priorities and
Yes.
hoping that the public will follow along as well, but.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
that's an excellent thing. And I know, so Ross, I know Rick is very well, that they want that great water.
Sure, yeah,
Uh-huh.
And I talked preliminary with Carlos about the way to run it. You run it underneath Loop Road and up onto Bird. And Bird all the way to the university. That's probably the most expeditious and the least impact in terms of residents and roads.
That's good.
and I might be wrong, but did you say we wouldn't want to sell this? Is there a particular reason to that? Even in year 5, year 7 down the line?
That's a whole nother process.
That's a whole nother thing, okay. Well,
Advantage of it for the city.
Sure.
And the university and.
yeah, and so my only thought there is, we were bringing in maintenance into the budget, which I really appreciate. Obviously, that needs to be like what we're building off of, but then there's also ways that, we could possibly make money and get to justify, whether that's $50,000 or $100,000. I don't know if it's that much, but that's what we get to be like, hey, maybe we don't have to raise rates so much because we're thinking at year 5 or year 7, we might have opportunities to fill some of those,
And that's
those holes. But
where I'm really grateful with council and the changes that they've made over the past several years. Because we review the rates annually now,
Yeah.
I think that's beneficial, because there may be a few years where we have, put them up a little bit. Get our projects done and then start bringing them back down. Ideally, when we went to the flat rate, I don't think we really thought long-term, we thought the benefit to the public.
Yeah.
So our sewer is a flat rate for residents, so before it was based on water consumption, because that's ideally what you're putting back into our sewer system. So when we changed it, I as a finance person,
Yeah.
I really didn't think long-term sustainability. I thought, yeah, we can do it within the budget. Yeah, we'll be okay year to year. But then when the bigger projects started coming up, I was like, wait a minute, we really need to consider changing this.
Yeah, and
So-
I do, I know you do this with every project, but I hope we will definitely go and search for money outside of,
Oh, yes.
obviously our tax residents.
Oh,
too,
yes,
but
always.
I appreciate all your, thank you.
And then Mayor E.
I think I have asked a lot of questions.
So you're good.
Good. I would like to turn it over to the public.
Anyone from the public like to talk wastewater treatment?
All right, come on up for the recording. Kirsten's on there. She won't be able to hear you from over there.
Hi, Kirsten.
Hi,
Lisa
Kirsten.
Fielder, Ward 5. I think Gio and Megan, somewhere near the end of 2021, first part of 2022, you had some engineer come in who had reviewed the wastewater treatment plant and gave a very comprehensive overview of its current state and recommendations for repairing it going forward. Do you remember that meeting? It was a fantastic presentation. If you could find that meeting and forward it to the new council members, perhaps
That's a great
all of the
idea.
council members.
Actually,
Yeah, as a refresh.
I've asked them.
I think that was a fantastic introduction to the whole system, the state it is in, what it needs, how it works. It's was one of the most educational, well, probably the most educational of many educational city council meetings I have been to.
Right.
And I think everybody would benefit, and I would like to go on the tour. Thank you.
Awesome. What's up? Yeah.
I'm telling you,
Good memory, Lisa.
we'll have 30 minutes between. I can take both of you out there.
I'm on it. I'm yours all afternoon.
Anyone else have an item they'd like to talk?
Kirsten, someone on.
Oh, Kirsten's on. Do you want to talk, Kirsten? No, she's just there to say hi.
Yeah.
I'm just listening in as I'm cleaning house mainly. So I'm here just listening.
You look great for cleaning house.
Thank you.
Yeah, usually
Y'all
my
are
hair.
doing great work.
Thank you.
I do want to commend the city council for focusing on infrastructure. It is the single most critical issue this city has going forward.
Yes.
Nothing else matters except possibility economic development, which depends
On
on.
infrastructure. Until we get the infrastructure fixed, we can't develop.
We're gonna do it parallel. We're gonna do it parallel. So if no one else from the,
Okay, come on.
I'm Martha Munoz, Ward 4. I've lived in areas of Texas, okay, not San Antonio area, but up around Dallas, where the effluent water had to be inspected. I, as a property owner, had my responsibilities and stuff. Can you expand on what happens to, and if there's any inspections or documentation for the water that's released at the golf course?
yes, it is inspected and tested, and it's a series of tests that they have to run. And if it doesn't pass those tests, then it doesn't go.
It doesn't go?
So, no.
And
That's
then-
why there was that long period of pause, because we were under the impression we had to do additional testing.
Mhm.
Which we weren't able to pass those tests. But then we realized because of the nature of where the water's going and what it's being used for, we weren't required to do those testing. And so they test. And I can ask them to do the information specific, but I know it's like the E. coli, that's a big one.
Uh-huh.
It is slightly chlorinated before it even goes out, and there's one other one. And so all of those are, we have to keep the records because TCQ inspects us.
So do you test it at the plant or you test it at the end site?
So the whole process is tested at every different section.
Okay,
So before it goes into the piping to go to the golf course,
Uh-huh.
it's tested.
okay. And then at the end, if
it-
it goes in clean, then it should come out clean, is the
Yes,
whole
it would be
concept
the
of
same,
it,
yes.
okay.
So,
Alright.
but if it doesn't meet the testing requirements, then it doesn't go to the golf course, it goes out into the creek, going out towards the end of town.
Okay, thank you.
And if you want the specific testing, I can,
No, I used to teach in North Dallas, we knew when
they weren't.
as a school teacher, we knew when things were not right with the water.
Uh-huh.
No joke.
No, no,
You
no.
you hear about teachers and moons, but in North Dallas, there's also issues with when the water's not right, so.
Oh.
No, yes, you would definitely know.
And I don't wanna piggyback off her entirely and be like, if we wanna put bad water out, but since we're sending it out in the creek already. If we did put that T towards Coconut, could it go into the creek in town, or would that just be a totally bad idea, as maybe she brought up to us?
So that would be that different permitting.
Uh-huh.
So if we get the different permitting that allows us to use it for other sources, then we could put it towards the creek, but there would still be additional monitoring for it because it is not obviously, you know, the
I
best.
think you were asking about if the water failed and wasn't able to go to the golf course.
Yes.
Oh, then no, it wouldn't.
No, we can't.
It wouldn't go
It could make somebody, it could kill somebody.
Yeah, so
It
that's
wouldn't
why
leave
it's
the
way
plant.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
Yeah.
reason we're allowed to go that way is
Yeah.
because by the time it gets to any other source of water,
sure.
it has gone through the sand, the rocks, the dirt, it's
Gotcha.
cleaned itself.
Clean this or something.
Yeah.
Is the Balls Creek, is that the creek that is going into?
No, it's further. way.
That's what I wanted to hear, Megan.
Oh, yeah, no, we would never bring it back.
Megan, just to kind of tie this whole thing back together, then when you talk next year, are we talking next budget year
For,
for clarifier and the clarifier that we're doing through ARPA?
so the second phase that we're in the progress, we will complete one clarifier and drying beds. Next year, we'll start the procurement process and hopefully
When you
I'm
say-
gonna budget
Wait.
some money to do the second clarifier.
When you're saying years, he wants to know, is it,
24, 25, with the expectation that the second clarifier hopefully will be finished.
is it
by
budget or calendar?
Budget,
Budget year.
Okay.
So the upcoming budget year is when we're gonna finish the clarifier and the
yes.
all the stuff from ARPA. Okay. So that's gonna happen between October over the next year on that one. And then on, you kind of mentioned a 3-year cycle. What are we thinking on years 2 and 3? We'll be finishing up the clarifier and
We'll be
the giant-
finishing up clarifier 2. Well, so when we finish clarifier 1 and clarifier 2, we will already start the procurement for the second clarifier. And then as the second clarifier is being completed, we'll be evaluating to see what we want for the third and fourth.
Okay, and you mentioned reserves as far as water last meeting, 900,000.
That is a number I threw out there, just so you know. So the reserves is for water and wastewater infrastructure.
Okay. They're together. All right. And then one last one, when we talk golf course, how big's the tank that holds water there?
I believe it's 50,000.
That's 50,000? And I remember going over, but I've just never had numbers. How much do we currently push to that tank? And how much can it do?
We push everything we can and we filled it anywhere between once to twice a day.
Oh, so we can push
So-
100.
If the
1,000 gallons.
plant is running properly. So there's some weeks where we'll only be able to fill it once. We're also, we can't continuously push it. So if the tank fills, we can't push any more out to it. They have to use it. So that's where the teams are working together to make sure we get the best. We're not wasting it.
Gotcha. So in theory, the golf course could expand and tie into their water piping. And we could possibly support that.
That's what I've been pushing.
But they
Yeah.
can't tie into their current piping. They have to put in purple
They
pipes.
gotta put a propane,
That's the TCQ requirement.
unless they change the whole water system.
If they cut off everything from all the potable.
Yep.
Then they could,
That way, when they came and showed us the event here, there was 2 sections of piping.
yes,
Ugh.
But they're already getting watered off purple piping in certain areas.
yes,
So they could expand off that.
yes.
Huh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think their tank's closer to 150,000 gallons. Yeah, because if you look at, I think it's a 50-foot tank. It's gonna be at least 10 feet. It's gonna be greater than 50,000.
It may be 150. I don't,
Yeah, it's okay.
my well data sheet is on my computer.
But the computation for affluent water, I thought was potentially up to 200,000 gallons. A day.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a huge. amount.
If it is running like it should.
If you got 2 clarifiers. So just another little piece, when you go out, talk to Richard and ask him, where does the affluent water come from? When you look at the clarifier that's running around, the water that spills over is the affluent water. Because it's all been processed. All the sludge goes out the bottom of the clarifier, it goes to the drying tanks, okay? The water that goes over the top then, if it meets the requirements, that's your affluent water.
And then that actually goes through a whole nother system.
Yes,
It goes through the RAS pumps and it goes through the chlorinators. So it's a whole puzzle, a whole
So the
map.
second clarifier is going to be key into introducing more effluent water.
You got it.
Huh?
Yep. Because right now they're doing what, most 85,000 a day?
About.
So what's the appetite for the golf course and being like, hey, we'll get all this free water now, affluent water and changing their pipes or cutting off? Is there any appetite there?
I'll tell you no,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they have their own well out there.
Yeah, so they
Oh.
can just keep using that.
Yeah, and so part of the discussion we've had back and forth is, come on, gang. Let's get everything off your own water, so you're not buying any city water.
Yeah,
One of the issues we go through is we negotiate what the rate is we charge. So long as we get them, in my mind, affluent water, they ought to be on their own. They shouldn't have to buy any city water, which goes back to the conservation side.
mm,
That's where it'd like to be, but I don't.
yeah,
Any further dialogue with them?
Tony came by yesterday and I told him to schedule a meeting with me. They're slowly trying to make capital improvements out there.
Mhm.
But they're just like, every other entity, they're struggling. There was no conversation on the water side. They're looking at some of the material that we offered.
Sure.
Yeah, we offered them pipe. Because the city has excess pipe we can't use for water because it's basically sun-degraded.
Sunbaked.
Sun-baked, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, so because you get ultraviolet light on it, it's not buried, it's sun-baked, so,
Sure.
but they can use it for their water system because they're not pushing high pressure.
Yeah.
But they're not motivated yet. I've offered, I'll get trenchers out there, we can help them, but they've not bid yet.
Hmm.
So they're just not motivated.
Okay.
It's money.
Maybe there's something there that can continue hoping that it changes.
Hope.
Yeah, yeah,
Hope.
yeah.
But I think over time, everyone's gonna realize, like my long-term goals, we have to self-sustain. If we can, like you said, lead by example, and we start showing those improvements within the city, the public will start moving that direction as well.
Yeah.
You already have a handful of people in Alpine that have that mindset. It's now, okay, we live in a desert, we need to conserve, we need to,
Yeah.
manage things correctly. But also at the same time, we need to forgive when mistakes happen. I know that, we have issues at our parks currently, we've had broken equipment, we haven't been able to water. But we made a mistake, we'll get back on track, we'll get the watering. But the resident who waters the sidewalk, it's like, lesson learned, let's not do it. That's the whole educational piece.
One final question, if we have time. 3 staff members out there, is there any discussion on new licenses or anything else for them? We got a class B and a couple class A's or?
So no, actually, we have a class B, we have no class A's. For the wastewater, we have class B, class C, and a class D. And the class D is working towards his C. He's also working towards his C on water.
So that should theoretically happen within the year?
I will not say theoretically because it's if they pass the test or not. So it's really dependent on them. If they're putting in all the extra effort and they pass, then yes,
So Richard has to be,
yes,
Mike has to see.
yes.
Okay.
Anthony has the D
Anthony's got.
and he's got a D water. And so he's working for both sides of the C. And then you have on the water side, Johnny has the C. Dom, Cassandra both have Ds.
Okay.
And so all of those are being pushed to getting their Ds.
And so even if we lost Richard, we'd have a C that covers us on the way far. Cool.
But we're not gonna lose them.
Correct.
We know about you and your jinxing.
Yeah, Richard's not going to.
You gotta be able to, I don't know if that wood counts, you might have to like.
I know, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
inside and not
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah.
We really do believe it here. It's already gonna be 5 o'clock. I don't know if you guys wanna take a break because at 5:30, we are bringing in, Justin Beagle. Radio. He is the legal attorney for the Texas Hotel Association of Texas, so he's actually gonna do a presentation on the hot funds. We tied it to our budget workshops because I thought it was important for those who are new on council to really know what the hot funds can be used for. There's a lot we can't use because we are tied to a 51% for advertising by state law. And then we disseminate the remaining portion to the other different categories. The state does control what we can and can't do with it. But I know I've spoken to Darren because he was part of a meeting that I attended as well. I want council to push to have them remove the 51% hold and to try to get the state to pass legislation that lets us use hot funds for infrastructure. It almost passed this last go round. It didn't, so hopefully we can push in that.
As in Jeff Davis County, right, by just like saying that it was just this one place, I think.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we're stuck with we're the only city in Texas that has to use 51% for advertising.
Cesar Blanco was pushing it last. legislature.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hopefully get some resolutions before council to support moving those efforts forward, because that would help with our infrastructure, because our hotels do use a large section of our infrastructure.
I have a working relationship with his staff, so happy to help there as well. Yeah.
That is good, because I really want to,
There's a number of both sides, yeah.
yeah, so we'll get some resolutions. So if you want to end this one and at 5:30, we'll start the next.
Adjourn.